that was me, that was you. And we're born with like so much confidence for our voices and our bodies. And so why do we shrink it out of girls?
It gets beaten out of us.
She said the shame needs to change sides. And I thought, how can I write a book about shame and about all the things that make women feel small if I don't talk about that and use it as a kind of tool to look at how we blame women.
Jane Goodall said something really brilliant, and I'll mess up the quote, but it was something like, it doesn't take much to be a difficult woman. That's why there's so many of us.
Yes, love that.
I love that.
What an icon.
Hello, Ashley.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good. So good to see you.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we did a little panel together a while back, and you were telling me about your book that we're going to deeply dive into in a moment. But it's now in book form, sat here. You must feel very excited about that.
Do you know what? I think it's like beautiful.
It's such a good cover.
Thank you. I was overly meticulous about the cover. I feel like I drove Penguin mad. I even went in with a Pantone chart.
Yes.
Went to Waterstones with just to look at the different shades of pinks on the bookshelf. So I'm glad that you like it.
I absolutely love it. But it's a weird and wonderful thing when all of your thoughts are processed in such, and it's a laborious process writing a book, but then you get it. You get the book. It's such an amazing moment.
Going to the factory, so I went to Clay's and I saw it get printed. I almost cried because it feels like that's my baby, and also just so cool to see it being printed alongside like massive, well-known authors that I grew up reading. So I was like, what pinch me moment? So good.
It's very exciting, and also a brilliant title, Bimbo. I love it. We're reclaiming the word bimbo, along with many others, or some we might want to ditch. I don't know how you feel about all of them, but you mention a lot of the words in the book that I'm about to say that are exclusively thrown at women, and there isn't a male equivalent. So bimbo being one, there is no male equivalent to the word bimbo. We've also got on the list, this is just some of them, frigid, drama queen, slut, nag, tart, cat lady. I mean, I will happily reclaim that one. That one's mine. Hag, bossy, mumsy. It's so interesting when you start to really dissect this list and see that there is no male equivalent to these words.
Unless, as I've hopefully shown in the book, unless it's a man who also doesn't fit inside the very narrow box of what masculinity is. So some might say like drama queen applies to a man who is effeminate. So, you know, I try to be, whilst I'm obviously focusing on like the female experience because I am one, I try to also look at how these words also impact men.
And it's interesting because like you just said there, they would be used for men that are probably showing some sort of femininity. Yeah. So it's still a slur towards women anyway, because it's derogatory.
It's insulting for men to be like a girl. Yeah. So we're teaching men and women that being like a girl, running like a girl, throwing like a girl, it's less than.
Mumsy's a really interesting one because I've caught myself saying it loads of times. I'm probably going to cut a load of my hair off this week because I just feel like it's a dead weight. And I was going to go long bob. And I said to my daughter, will I look a bit mumsy? And I was like, oh my God, that was in Ashley's book. Don't say the word mumsy. What the fuck? And you catch yourself like these are all things that are just common parlance. Like we say this stuff all the time. But it's so interesting how being mumsy, which is basically just like being a mum, is a slur.
Yeah. And also mums are like the punchline. I also use the word mumsy, and this is the kind of the point I wanted to make, that even though it's in our language, it's not me saying you should never say any of these words or do any of these things. It's almost like, yeah, why do we say that? That's so weird. And I remember when I became pregnant, I was like, I just don't want to, I don't want to be like a mum or just a mum, or I'm not going to dress mumsy, as if every other mum who came before me was like, this is it for me now. Give me my pinny.
Yeah.
So it's so weird, isn't it? Like, and the one that really irks me still is people who say, oh, well, I focused on my career. I chose not to have kids, which, by the way, that is also in the book. People should accept that a lot of women don't want to have children. And I think often we put a lot of pressure on women, like whether it's we're telling them they're selfish or there'll be no one to look after them when they're old. So it's all about respecting people and their choices, whatever they are. But I find whenever anyone says, oh, I didn't have children because I focused on my career, I always think, do you think that some of us, like mums don't want to focus on their career, not to say all mums do, but we never throw that at dads. A dad would never be like, I'm a career dad.
No.
I'm a stay-at-home dad. I put off having children because I wanted to focus on my career. They can just do what they want.
Nor would dadsy be a slur. Because I think when men really show up as fathers and they do the stuff that more traditionally has been taken care of by women, it's so overly praised. So actually, if you were to have so hands-on. So if you were to say someone was dadsy, you'd probably be like, "That's so great."
And
how
even
great.
Looking at bodies, because I suppose Bimbo, it's looking at how language and expectations slowly strip away our voice, but also our bodies. And if you think that like a mum bod is like considered disgusting, it's all about getting your body back or ruining your body, but a dad bod's kind of like cute, isn't it? Like I think I saw an article a while ago that Leo DiCaprio had a dad bod. I don't even know if he's a dad, but I was like, sorry, I was like recovering. I was in my like postpartum recovery phase at that point, and there was so much like talk about whether or not I'm going to bounce back, even if it was just a journalist being like, do you want to bounce back? And at the time I was experiencing like piles, prolapse, vaginismus, all of this which is in the book. But I was like, hang on a minute. So I'm looked at as disgusting and being asked when I'm going to look like I haven't had a baby. And Leo DiCaprio, who I don't even think is a dad, is being like praised. And even if he was, bod.
He certainly hasn't grown a child. So, I mean, it's all absolutely absurd. P.S. Piles are the worst pain ever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. When I had my operation about, whenever it was, a year and a half ago, it was so painful. People don't talk about this because it's like, oh my God, piles, we can't talk about it. One of the most painful things of all time. Horrendous.
Honestly, this is, again, a lot of the things I talk about in the book, and I'm so open about my own postpartum recovery, whether it was like fecal incontinence, because I feel like there's so much shame and stigma around it, and it's really isolating. And I think it actually does a disservice to women because we are made to feel like we shouldn't talk about it. We also therefore don't push for better care. And I had an experience where I was basically having loads of pain after Alfie, my first baby who I had vaginally, and I went to one of the top gynecologists in the country to see what was going on because I couldn't even insert a tampon without pain. And I remember him saying, oh, I've had a look and the stitches are fine, there's no scar tissue, so it's all in your head. And I was like, okay, well, how can I get it out of my head because it's painful? And so I ended up going to an amazing private health physio called Marta, and she, within like 2 seconds, at this point I'd given birth like 22 months before, she diagnosed me with something called vaginismus. I think that's how you say it. And within like 2 minutes, she just basically like released the muscle, and then I was fine. And so I feel like we don't really talk about it. I think Meghan Trainor might have had it, and she did talk about it. And then it was like sensationalized in the media in this quite grim way. And I try to like push through all of the embarrassment and the taboo because hopefully it helps other people so that they don't have to be in pain or they don't have to put up with piles and prolapse. And I always say this talk of bounce back culture, all I wanted to do was like bounce back in. And I find it's almost like the Titanic iceberg where we talk about this bit, which is how we look in our appearance, but actually there's a whole host of other issues that not everybody gets, but a lot of women experience, and we just don't talk about it.
No, we don't talk about any of it because it is, and then I think, as you say, it breeds secrecy but also shame, and people then do suffer in silence because they sort of think, well, I couldn't possibly tell anyone that I've had piles, or I can't go to the toilet, or I can't insert a tampon. It's all hush hush, keep it super secret, and that keeps women suffering unnecessarily, you know. Yes. But like you say, there is a massive lack of healthcare in that department. It's not highlighted as something that is seemingly important. Even if we look at pelvic floor health, I cannot jog without pissing my pants. I can't go on a trampoline, God no. Laughing, sneezing, like my pelvic floor is fucked. And there's obviously like no care afterwards that's commonplace, that, you know, how's your pelvic floor doing? Let's talk about it. How can we help you out there? If you've got to really seek out a way to fix that. I still haven't. Wait
for a really long time if you're going on the NHS. And I think that's why I speak really openly in the book about the times that I've used private healthcare, because I feel really lucky that I have been able to do that. But I also feel like a sense of sadness for people who can't do that and who don't know how to advocate for themselves. And it's like, I just find it like and it's not just about motherhood. There's so many other areas, whether it's endometriosis or even like for teenage girls, periods, like there's so much taboo and stigma that we're kind of making us lose our confidence. And actually things like incontinence, you can get treatment and you don't have to live with it. I feel like it's kind of that myth, isn't it, that if you're a mum, you avoid trampolines.
Yeah. I know. I still haven't sorted it out. It's so far down my priority list, although it bugs me all the time. But I think it's because it's not talked about. And if these subjects were more commonplace, I think I would probably more readily think about it and assume, yeah, of course I need that to be sorted out, a solution. I love going running. I went boxing with my son for the first time last night, and for the whole hour, all I was thinking is, just like squeeze in, don't push yourself, just like keep everything nice and tight so no wee comes out. And it's
Fearne, you just need to embrace it and get some tenor pads.
Oh, I've got the pants, I've got the period pants on constantly. It's ridiculous. But there is, I think, a lot of these subjects are kept really quiet, and actually also our level of complaint around derogatory slurs that we have all probably had thrown our way over the years. I think bossy is a really interesting one because it seems quite innocuous and something that we hear from when we start school. And it's, again, rarely put upon a boy. It's always a young girl, or then if you're, a boss at work or you're leading a team, if you're seen to be what a male might be called assertive, it's actually just she's bossy. And that's deterring, I think, women from having a voice, having their say, saying what their needs are. And
I think when you think that, I remember being called bossy from as young as primary school. I was probably, called bossy even as like a 2-year-old, which is my daughter now. And I think that's why I wanted to shape the book in the way I did. So it's like girlhood, maidenhood, womanhood, singlehood, motherhood, elderhood, because I feel like so many of us experience these words, and at the time, you're right, they feel like completely innocuous or harmless. But actually, we are conditioning girls to, because if you're saying, oh, don't be bossy, or you're being very bossy, of course, most of us want to be the good girl. So we're like, okay, I better learn to be less assertive. And I remember at the time, I'd be thinking that I'd be being helpful. So if it was like pass the parcel at my party, I was like, right, everyone sit down. The music's going to come on. It'd be actually stop being bossy. And in my head, I was like, but I'm trying to help. I don't get it. Whereas you're right. Like, I don't think we ever would call a guy bossy.
No. I like taking charge sometimes. Like, I am a bit of a control freak, which might be another slur. But I am also someone that likes organisation. And if I sense things are lagging or things could be more motivated, I quite like being that person that's like, come on, we can do this, then that, get things moving. I like motivating. And I think it's so often seen as just plain old bossy.
And also, don't you think when we think about the world we're kind of putting our daughters out into, I don't know how old
Honey's 10 now.
Yeah, so like, as she enters like her teens, and then whether she goes to uni or gets a job, we need girls to be assertive. And I certainly felt in the book, I talk about lots of like very personal experiences that I haven't really discussed before, not mainly to look at the way in which we like shrink girls and make them feel not confident to say no or to be assertive. And so I feel like I want Ada to be bossy. I mean, it would be much easier if she was bossy to everyone else and maybe not to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But then you're kind of like, no, I want her to keep this confidence. And the inspiration behind the book was that Ada's 2, and when she looks in the mirror, she's so... like, I love the way she looks at her body with like wonder and like pats her belly and even like sees my belly. Like she's always like saying how squishy it is and she loves it. And I think like that was me, that was you. And we're born with like so much confidence for our voices and our bodies. And so why do we shrink it out of girls?
It gets beaten out of us, socially conditioned out of us. Mm-hmm. And I so agree with you. I think the good girl trope holds so many of us grown women back still to this day. And I think I've mulled over it a lot because I've been writing about that subject a bit. And I think a lot of the time we genuinely question whether we're inherently good. We're not sure. I've sat there many times, probably even at times last week, maybe even today, where there's some sort of subconscious pondering, like, am I a good person? am I an awful person? And we're not quite sure. So we assume that if other people are there to validate, oh, good girl, you did the right thing, which basically means to comply, then we can tell ourselves, oh, phew, thank God, I'm a good person. But actually, that begins that whole shrinking process.
And also, men aren't held to that same standard. Somebody was talking recently to me about Donald Trump, and they were saying, he might be a bit rogue, but he is the man who can lead us at the moment because it's a cruel world. And then I compared it to the way we treat Meghan Markle, for example, or even at the moment like Nicola Peltz. They are the difficult woman. So I think for us, we see the way other women are treated when they are considered difficult. And for like difficult feels like it's like when you don't stay in your lane and be compliant and be pleasing. And we're also very quick to always blame the woman and not the man.
Yep.
So like, rather than like Prince Harry and Brooklyn taking ownership of how they navigate their family dynamics, it's always she's the homewrecker, it's her. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I thought men were really powerful and able to control the world, so how come it's like the witchy woman? And it's like a modern day witch hunt, really, how we treat women who don't stay in our lane and behave.
Jane Goodall said something really brilliant, and I'll mess up the quote, but it was something like, it doesn't take much to be a difficult woman, that's why there's so many of us.
Love that.
I love that.
What an icon.
What an icon. And also there's that other one that I bought my cousin a little plaque with it on this year, and it's just something along the same lines of women that aren't difficult, or like the good girl rarely make history, or something. The one, I can't think what it is, but it's
good girls rarely make history.
And it's so true that, and that's not to imply that we don't want to help people out, be part of something bigger than ourselves, and, do the right thing when it's needed, but not at the cost of living, and this sounds fucking cheesy, but living authentically. I think that word gets batted about so willy-nilly, but it's the one thing that we lose when we're complying, is just remembering who we are and how we want to move through the world.
And also I feel like what happiness for us is. Because I always found that, or I felt like when I was younger, for me, like the happy ever after was marriage, babies. Because that's where all like the rom-coms we watch, or the Disney movies, it ends with the woman and the man galloping off into the sunset. So there's no like, well, what happened after? Did he share the mental load? Did she get great girlfriends to support her? And so I felt like as I navigated singlehood in my mid-20s to late 30s, it suddenly hit me how much society viewed me as a failure. So, and I talk about this a lot in Bimbo, that even though lots of my friends were in unhappy relationships, they were assumed to not be lonely and to be fulfilled. And, so many of the tropes that we throw at single women, and we blame singlehood on women. We don't say like, well, why aren't men stepping up and being good partners? And as you said, it's like that crazy cat lady, but also spinster. And I loved learning about the word spinster, because spinsters were the original independent women, because they earned a living from doing it's like sewing, isn't it, being a spinster. So that to me made sense. I was like, oh, they were like independent and free, and it got weaponized against them. And I used to always feel really sorry for like older women if their partner died and then they were on their own. I was like, oh, that's so sad. And now I'm like, oh no, I kind of get it. They would probably just like, oh, thank God I don't have to look after anyone anymore. It's my time to be free. And so I feel like the whole way that I've seen that happy ever after, I think I call it in my book Happy Never After, that it's like the idea of happiness and completion can look completely different to what we've been taught. And I want Ada to grow up, knowing that she can be anything. She can have children or not have children. She can get married or not get married. And I also try to like never assume that she's going to meet a man and be straight, and then she has to like come out of that box to be herself. So it's just like, it's frightening how much already she is having put on her that I obviously can't control.
No, I mean, we don't know, certainly when like my kids are now 10 and 13, and it's, what their friends are saying to them, what they're watching sometimes on YouTube, although you try and keep a handle on that, or what the messaging is in films. It'd be absurd to think we can control the whole narrative. But I think, like, if you look back, you're so right. Like, if you look back to when I was a kid, I remember going to my nan's, and obviously, like, when we were sort of in the 80s, 90s, your grandparents weren't like, right, let's do an activity. They were like, put you in front of the TV, and then they'd go off and, do the gardening or whatever. And I was put in front of the TV to watch Grease, and I was transfixed. I remember being like, I want to go to American high school. This is amazing. I love every bit of it. And now you look back and you go, holy shit, that storyline's problematic. She was bullied for being the person she turned up as. So she then started wearing black tight leggings and everyone loved her and she got the guy. What the fuck?
And I feel like there's even one bit where he like kisses her without consent.
Yeah.
As well.
Gives
But
her
also,
a hickey.
the thing that like
in the car.
The thing that I find the maddest about Grease is even when I watch it now, I'm like, why are they all so old?
Why are they 30?
They're meant to be
18?
in school, and I feel like I still look at them as older than me.
I know. The whole thing is mad. I still actually would go as far to say as I would enjoy watching it, but with an understanding that the plot is a problem. The plot is a problem.
Do you know what? I feel like that's the great thing that we could do. Like if I were to watch it with Alfredo, I feel like you could be like,
have a chat about it
afterwards. Like,
yeah.
What do you think about the bit where he kissed her? And then, so I feel like you still can enjoy problematic, I suppose you'd call them, movies, but because they're going to see things and read things.
Of course.
And like, especially in this online world where apparently like kids as young as 8 are seeing violent porn. And I think that's why we have to be able to talk to them about what they're seeing and what they're consuming, because we can't wrap them up in cotton wool.
We can't.
Sadly.
I think you're so right, like having those discussions. But it is, I think films like Grease, I'm not purely blaming Grease for God's sake, but we were just indoctrinated in so many ways when we were children with, fairy tales or pantomimes or movies, whatever it might be, and how it has a lasting impression in so many interesting ways. One of the things that really got me that you talked about in the book was your inability, looking back now, as a teenager and young woman, to say no to men. And I had exactly the same experience where I think many, many women did, of my generation, your generation. Growing up, we didn't feel that we had the right, the place or the confidence to say, I don't want to do that, or I just want to stay in tonight and not do anything, or whatever varying degree of severity we're talking about. I think we found it very hard to say no because we wanted to be liked. We wanted to be, adored by them. So we played ball. I remember like changing my music tastes according to who I was with. And what the hell is that about? Like, I was too scared to go, your music taste is awful. I'd pretend I liked it and like go to gigs that I hated, like ridiculous stuff. And obviously then moving into other territory, which is tricky. I mean, you tell one horror story about when you're walking along the street as a young person. Do you mind telling that now?
Oh, yeah. So I talk a lot about my experiences of sexual harassment and sexual assault. And I really grappled with whether or not to share the stories, but I wanted to look at how we treat shame and victim blaming. And also, I think, when we're talking about our experiences at school, that's our normal. So we didn't question it because that was the way it was. And talking about films as well, like American Pie, I speak a lot about in the book because that kind of shaped the way we viewed like that boys will be boys culture and the kind of slut shaming culture and sexuality, which is something else I speak about in the book. But with, the different experiences I had, I think I was 13 and I was walking through Carlisle and a man stopped me to say, "Oh, are you a model?" And, somebody that was just kind of discovering that the world thought I was pretty and who never felt pretty or validated growing up, I was like, no. And he was like, "Oh, you could be. I work with loads of agencies in London." And I like, if you grow up, especially where I did, like London is like, ooh, you could make me a model in London. So he said, "Let's go around the corner and I'll take some images for you." And he kept saying, "Oh, just put your top a little bit lower, a little bit lower." And he was coming in and I did realised pretty quickly that I'd been kind of scammed, but I was also like on my own around a corner. And I even like now I'd be like, no, this is inappropriate, go away. But I remember thinking, oh no, what have I done? And I didn't even tell my parents or friends because I felt stupid. And I think I call the chapter in the book Silly Girl, because we do question always, and not just us as a society, but also our court systems, why the girl, like, what was she wearing? What was she doing? Was she drunk? Why did she go round, like, in my case, why did you go round there with him? You should have known better. Or we tell girls, and so many of us do it with good intentions, you can't go out like that. Why are you wearing that? And it's teaching us that if anything happens to us, it's because we haven't done the job of protecting ourselves.
No one's saying
properly.
he was a dirty old pervert walking around the streets with a camera. I mean, it is absurd. I think that is one of the biggest problems that we've still got in society today, is that the emphasis is on the woman. The man is almost taken out of the equation in this situation. And for you as a young person, that is a horrendous thing to have to go through.
Yeah, and there were lots of other experiences. And I talk about in the book about, my experience at university where I was raped. And I've never talked about it, but I think about it every day. And I remember having a discussion with a friend saying, I don't know whether to put this in the book or not, because I still feel a sense of, obviously, upset, because it's something that I feel like really does take something huge away from you. But also, I didn't come forward. And it actually took me a long time. It was only when I told an ex at the time, and he was like, no, you were raped. And I was like, oh no, but I was drunk, and I was still like blaming myself. And I think that is what we do as a society, and that is the message we tell young girls. Like, the more we tell someone but also the ironic thing for me is, especially back then when I think club culture was so much bigger, and that is just what you did. Like, we didn't set the dress codes, like you had to dress a certain way to get into the club, but then we almost blamed the woman for dressing that way. And it's not like, I couldn't afford to get a taxi home or anything like that. But I really, I think, was inspired by the absolutely horrific case of Giselle Pellico and the way in which she dealt with something so horrific with so much grace, and the way she turned up every day with her head held high. And she said, the shame needs to change sides. And I thought, how can I write a book about shame and about all the things that make women feel small if I don't talk about that and use it as a kind of tool to look at how we blame women. And I tell a story about a case in Italy where a woman was raped in a toilet in a bar or nightclub, and because she didn't lock the toilet door, the judge decided that she had given mixed signals. So it's not just that the culture of victim blaming needs to change, but it's like the whole system.
The legal system
does.
And
the more we the more we internalize it ourselves, the less likely we are to demand that the system changes. And God forbid anything ever happened to my daughter, would I want her to feel like that was her dirty little secret? Absolutely not, because I did nothing wrong. So I think that was my reason for wanting to include something that I still find really difficult to talk about, because it's like, enough now. I don't want to feel like it's this secret, or that I'm a victim, or, like I should actually be able to hold my head up high, but also demand better so that other women don't have to feel like they could have controlled it.
I mean, it's a really tricky thing to start writing about, to then have to talk about in this capacity. But do you feel like there is a slight weight taken from you now, having said those words out loud?
I think I'm really scared because I don't want it to be sensationalized or questioned. And I think I try to almost preempt I know that often when anyone talks about it, you see this backlash in a way of, well, why didn't she talk? Why is it taken so long? Why didn't they report it? Why didn't? So already it feels like the victim is on trial. So I think I wouldn't say relief, but it's like, well, I did nothing wrong. And it's more, I don't want anyone else to either live with the shame, or if it ever does, God forbid, happen, for them to live with that shame. And I think I really wanted this book it is the book that I wish I'd had as a teenager, or I wish I'd had in my 20s. I wish I'd had when I was navigating singlehood or new motherhood. And so I wanted to be as like honest as possible about everything.
Yeah. Do you think that the shame element's gone? Because I think that I've had like big periods of my life where I've lived like drowning in shame. And not that I've talked about, my whole life publicly. I don't want to, feel the need to, or am anywhere near ready. But I think when you can chat to, in my case, it's my therapist, or if it's a friend, about things that make you feel full of shame, there is something magical about saying it and that shame slightly dissipating. It might not go entirely, but I think there's great power in it not living secretly, because when it's in your head exclusively, that's when I think you can just become so blinded by it. It's so all-consuming. So have you found that even just having that private time to put it down on your laptop and get it out of you, there was a slight shift?
Yeah, I think I've had enough of living with shame. And like
too.
Another great example is I talk a lot about like the hyper-sexualisation of the female body, and my experience as someone who had really big boobs from the age of 14. And I still actually feel a huge sense of shame now, but I can be like, enough, Ashley, like this, your body is not the problem. The way society judges and sexualises a woman's body is. And I feel like, how am I now 38? I've got 2 kids and I'm still being policed in how I dress. And it's that the labels of like frumpy, slutty, who have you got the girls out for? And we don't treat men in that way. Like Tommy sometimes walks around with his top off my partner, when it's a hot day, or we'll see other men do it. And I always say to him, asking for it. Because it highlights the ridiculousness.
It's insane.
I spark debate, or when I was breastfeeding my kids, there'd be debate around whether it was appropriate to breastfeed or whether I was attention seeking. And I remember thinking, who do you think I want attention from in this setting?
Your child.
Yeah, and interestingly, I got my account blocked on TikTok for child pornography, because I put on a clip. It was about motherhood and there happened to be a clip of me breastfeeding. You couldn't see anything, but even if you could, it's like, hang on. So we allowed for too long voices like Andrew Tate telling people it was okay to strangle women, but you draw the line at breastfeeding. And why is that sexual? Like, why is that sexual? And I think that's, again, like, it's such a tool of shame that whether I was a child, which was 14, being told like, cover up, you don't want to distract the boys, you don't want to distract men, you don't want to get unwanted attention. Sorry, I'm a child. Yeah. Teach men not to sexualize and objectify us. And I also wanted to look at like the way in which we teach kids about female bodies and sex education, because I feel like we only really learn, either these days more so through like porn, which is often very like catered to male gaze and male pleasure and quite violent, or in a very like reproductive way. And it's like, we're more than sexual beings and sexual organs. And I don't want to be policed for my body. And I know female politicians also experience the same.
Yeah.
Right? They're constantly, people focus on, I remember, I think it was Lisa Nandy in Parliament about 10 years ago, there was an article saying, whose boobs are these? Because she was wearing like a top, and it's like, I'm sorry, I'm a woman, I do have cleavage. A huge debate on this morning. Ironically, I was talking about when the photographer yelled at Hannah Wadding, get your legs out. And I was saying
I loved that whole moment. It was so great. Her just giving them shit back.
Yeah, and good. And she is someone that's like, I refuse to be objectified.
Yes.
And we need to see more of that. And I was talking about the objectification of the female body, and I came off air and people were like going mad and complaining about my cleavage. And I was wearing like this 3-piece suit. I was still breastfeeding. To be honest, I was so chuffed that I'd found a bra that didn't show with the suit. I didn't even think about the fact I had cleavage. And
Who cares?
I was like, but there is that, I guess, that teenage girl still in me that's like, oh no, have I been a bad girl? But why is my breast size linked to my morality or my promiscuity? Why can't I just have a body? Because, you know, sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just get like a boob job so that I don't have to live with it anymore. And every woman I've spoken to who has had a breast reduction is like, it freed my life. But then the other side of me is like, no, fuck off. Why do I have to essentially pay to mutilate myself to almost be not shamed and not sexualized? And what if my daughter, funny enough, Ada woke up this morning, I'd not seen her for a while because I'd been on a work trip, and she was like, Mummy, how did you get here when I'm a big, big girl? I'll have big boobies like you. And right now I've got small boobies. And I was thinking, yeah, if you have my body one day, am I teaching you that actually to be left alone, you should get a breast reduction? Like, no, and I think a lot of it comes from women because we have been taught so much internalized misogyny, and I'm always unpicking things. I think I said something in the book and I left it in because I said something about granny pants. And then I was like, oh, is that ageism and misogyny kind of tied into one? And I love that I'm always learning, and I wanted the book to kind of make people consider like, oh yeah, I say that. I didn't even think about that. Or I punch down on other women. I definitely used to always punch down on other women. And I think there's a chapter called like Pick Me Girl, and I was the perfect pick me because I felt like I didn't want to be like a girl because I'd been taught, and we're all taught, that doing anything like a girl is not as serious or not as respected as rejecting femininity.
Yes, that's such an interesting topic. And again, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, especially at my age, where the whole sort of aging debate comes into it as well. Like, you're not allowed to age, but equally if you have Botox, then you're judged. So again, like with your body, you can't win. Whatever you're doing, there is no perfect outcome where everybody's happy and like, oh yes, you're a woman that I can like and respect and take seriously, but also you're attractive. It's so mad, the level of scrutiny and judgment. And actually what your book's doing perfectly, and what I think many of us are trying to delicately chat about, and I think for people listening to this now, you'll probably hear both of us constantly having to put in little disclaimers or say, but also if you want to be that kind of woman, it's okay. Because we know that there is just so much judgment on everything we're saying and doing, and none of us, we can't speak for every single female experience out there. Everybody's going through something entirely different. You can speak to yours, I can speak to mine, but I think most women feel trapped in this limbo land of not quite knowing how to be a feminist. And the fact that, like you've just said, we might have to reject femininity altogether to be seen as someone that can be taken seriously. You know very well the wonderful Carol Vorderman. She's almost like a mentor, would you say?
Yeah, I actually call her Auntie Carol.
Auntie Carol. She's an icon.
Best.
And I think she is perfectly demonstrating everything that I'm trying to say now by being one of the smartest, highest IQs out there. Yet she also decides on certain days to wear very figure-hugging clothing, and she'll wiggle her bum to camera, and then she'll do a maths equation. And why the fuck not?
I honestly love her.
Me too.
The support that she's given me personally. And actually, she's one of the quotes on the book. She was the first to be like, yeah, love to do it. She is a powerhouse of a woman. And like you say, like, she doesn't care. Like, she is like, I'm beauty and brains. And I was always taught you can be one or the other. She is like, she does not give a fuck. And we should all aspire, whatever our path looks like, to be more like Carol, basically.
Yeah, be more Carol, more Carol. And like you said a moment ago, just looping back to that, it's often other women that are judging us. This is not a conversation where we're going, men are all twats and men need to think that, it's the patriarchy has indoctrinated all of us to have this internal misogyny that then, ensues in ways where we're looking at other people in our lives or female celebrities and we're judging them. This is not, a rhetoric that's coming from men. There's problems in all areas, but a lot of the time it's other women saying, oh, well, I didn't do that. Well, I did that. Well, I wouldn't act like that. And it's just so noisy.
And I think we're like chained to all these like dichotomies. It's like Madonna whore, Hailey versus Selena. And I feel like it's all done deliberately. Like even like breastfeeding, bottle feeding. Why are we debating that? Men aren't having to defend how their baby's
They're
fed.
their kids.
And so it's perpetuated by like the media and the language. And I noticed that, the woman is always flaunting her figure or showing off her postpartum. And it's all these ways to slowly try and make us punch down on each other instead of kind of coming together. I think one of the chapters in the book, I talk about sisterhood, because it was like almost my realization that I'm like, we could be so powerful together. Sometimes I think, wow, I think there is like 51%, the world is 51% women or 53% women. Think how much we tolerate and the fact we're not equal. Like if we all realise, like stopped the infighting that we're kind of taught to do, and actually we're like, we could stop all of this patriarchal bullshit. And I think I always said jokingly that I wanted Bimbo to like destroy the patriarchy, because I want people to read it and be like, oh yeah, I've done that. Whether it's I know I used to talk about mothers in a really bad way, and I tried to be really honest about that I had such a negative perception of motherhood, which obviously hit me like a ton of bricks when suddenly I was on the other side of it, and I was like, oh no, but I'm actually really nice. And or whether it's, I remember like being really ageist when I was older, and I talk really openly about that, but I feel like we don't learn, we're taught to become that way through everything we consume. Even like the fat phobia that we're taught, that's actually like detrimental to all of us, because it makes us all live with this idea that like we have to be the most physically shrunken version of ourselves, even if it's not healthy. And I want this book to make people stop and think, oh yeah, I do that, or I think that way, so that hopefully we just like can ignore the noise and like just be kinder to each other.
Yeah, I think so much of it is, it's so ingrained that we don't even know we're saying these things or thinking it sometimes. And again, there needs to be, like you said, room for us all to catch ourselves, to learn, to think, oh, maybe I'm going to use different language or judge that person less than I have been. It's, it's a big learning curve for all of us. I don't think, you're certainly not expecting everyone to be completely up to date with everything immediately. Like, we're all learning on the job here and unpicking hundreds of years of history.
I wanted this book to be the book that isn't like coming from a high place or a pedestal of like, look at me, I'm so like worldly on feminism. It's a kind of like, I don't know none of this and I've done all of these things and here's what I've learned. And I talk about, like history, whether it's the crazy cat lady or the spinster, or whether it's looking at the history of marriage and that whole idea of...
Oh, we need to get into that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about marriage. Let's talk about marriage, because you're absolutely vehemently not going to get married.
If I get married, I think just check in on me and make sure that was something that I wanted to do. Because I'd be shocked if I changed my mind on this. But interestingly, every time I get interviewed, or not every time, but often when I get interviewed, they'll say, oh, do you hope he's going to pop the question yet? And I'm always like, I hope not. And they look horrified. And also, it's one of the things I find the most difficult to talk about. And so I try to be really careful, because loads of my friends want to get married. And also I want them to know that if they choose to get married, I'll be at that wedding. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm judging. But I've asked so many friends, probably to an irritating level, like, why are you married? Men and women. Because I'm trying to understand what the appeal is. And it feels a bit like I'm not in on the excitement that everyone else is. And I'm like, what am I missing? I feel like I've been plucked from a completely different planet. And I can't get my head around it.
Well, I think you explain very articulately some of the reasons, and some of them are tied up in the ceremony itself, which I hadn't really taken the time to properly digest. One of them being the infamous bouquet throw. We've all been there, we've seen it, we might have even rugby tackled someone to the floor to try and grab it. It again has been pressed upon us that we should be the lucky one that catches the bouquet, so we're chosen next. And again, all the emphasis on the girl being the lucky one, the woman being the chosen one, and the man being the one who's sort of sat there going, oh no, maybe her, whatever.
Hopefully she doesn't get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, joking around about that. Whereas you say in the book, why have we not got a row of men stood there? They should be rugby tackling each other to the floor to be the lucky chosen one. I'd never thought about that.
Research shows the happiest people, single women, single child-free women, and married men. And when you think of in a traditional gender role, so I'm not saying that marriages can't be amazing and equal, but when you look at like the traditional role, like the woman gives so much of herself. I look at like the mental load if you choose to have children. Like men get so much more from marriage than we do. They essentially, in a traditional sense, get a maid, therapist, cook, child bearer, child raiser, like all of these things. And yet it's like, I call it, I think it's like patriarchal gaslighting, that we're told we are the lucky ones. But even though evidence shows that it literally takes years off our life because we give so much and we're left burnt out. And obviously lots of people at the moment are trying to blame feminism. But feminism means that we have the choice either to get married or not get married without living with the social shame, but also to leave if it's ever becomes like dangerous or unhappy. And so I just don't understand how we've been told, like, even like, oh, you know, he said, like, she said yes or I said yes. And it's like, but can't we have more say? And why are we still asking for the man's permission? Like, why isn't our yes enough? They have to also, it's so often asked for the dad. And I know that lots of people see that as a sign of respect. So I just try to look at like the history of all of that. Like
the history is like you pay a dowry.
Oh, it's my ball and chain.
Yeah, that's not good. It's fucking mad, isn't it? The whole thing is so, it's so unbelievably bonkers. I think
Martin Lewis did tell me that actually I'm crazy for not getting married. He was like, if you're an independently smart woman, and I think I also talk about this in the book, that the laws still benefit married women. So if I did say to Tommy once, I have found a reason to get married. Basically, if one of us dies, and he was like, oh, how romantic. But yeah, it's really interesting. So I talk about all of that. And even, you know, if I was someone who quit my job to have children, then I would also get married, because you're giving yourself protection so that if it ever didn't work out. So I try to give like a really fair, balanced view where I look at all the history and the patriarchal gaslighting, but also the reality and the protections.
I think the dynamic is so interesting, whether you're married or not. If you have children, or maybe even don't have children, and you live with your partner and it's a heterosexual relationship, the emotional load that a woman carries is, and this is not my opinion, this is statistically written out, the disparity is huge. And when Gabor Mate came on the podcast yonks ago, I couldn't tell you when it was, but he often brings out those exact statistics. And that is why so many women disproportionately have autoimmune diseases, because we are stressed to the core, trying to juggle a million different things, facilitating so many different people's needs. And we're told subliminally again that our needs really do not matter, that everybody should be above us. And if we ever exercise any desire to do something for us, it's seen as like, oh, who does she think she is doing something for herself?
Who's looking after the kids?
Who's looking after the kids?
But also, don't let yourself go.
No.
So service the children, service your husband.
Better fucking look good.
Chapter in my book called Lie Back and Think of England. So it's like having to make sure the house is tidy, making sure the kids are tidy, making sure your husband is sexually serviced and looked after and feels loved, but also don't let yourself go. No.
I think so many people, again, don't talk about this. I mean, I've talked about it with my friends for years and years, that when you are a mother, and also if you work on top of that, but not even, if you're looking after children, and you talk about in the book when you're like touched out, when you've been touched so many times by your kids, because they you know, they're like pulling at you when they're toddlers, or, you know, even when they're big kids, or asking for things, and it's so overstimulating. Like last night, my daughter had a friend over and they were watching YouTube dance routines so loudly, and I could feel myself, like I was so overstimulated. I needed to like run out. I didn't run out of the house, but I needed to like get out of there. It was just, everything's all so consuming. But when you've got little children pulling at you, wanting, or if you're breastfeeding, then you get them to bed eventually. All you want to do is close your eyes and black out. And then if you've got a partner who wants physical touch or sex, it can feel like the last thing you want to do. And again, women are scared to say that because they're like, oh, people are going to think that you're, you know, I don't know what it is. Like you're not being a good enough wife, or that you're not prioritizing sex. And it's like, oh my God, we can't win.
And I think so much of that is that kind of inner misogyny that we have about motherhood, because I definitely said, I will never put my relationship second. I'll never prioritize the kids before my partner, or I'll never let our sex life go. But we don't, and we almost like put the blame on the woman. If he leaves, it's because she like she let herself go, or because she slept with her kids, or she gave up. And I that's the reason I tried to talk about it, because also imagine how much better relationships would be if we actually knew what we were getting ourselves into. Whereas I feel like we're almost sold this rose-tinted version of motherhood where we think we will be able to prioritize our partner and
do everything
else. And maybe some people can, but that wasn't me. But then you feel like a failure and like a bad wife or bad partner. I wish if we were just more open about it, we'd kind of stop blaming the woman or the mother, and also for mothers to feel empowered that it's not a them problem. It's this like almost like systemic problem that we're putting too much. And especially when they'll be like, oh, he changes nappies, so he's really hands-on. No, I'm hands-on.
Yeah, I'm a hands-on mum.
Yeah.
I know, I think it is systemic, because not only do we have these nuclear families where often we're moving away from, back in the day, it would have been aunties, uncles, grandparents who all could have mucked in. And there are some communities, I think, you know, some countries in Europe are better than we are at doing it. I think Sweden's pretty good on the map for that kind of thing. But we are notoriously bad in the UK. People move away from home, not always, but often so. Childcare is insanely expensive. So people do have to make the choice, usually the woman, if they want to work or not. So then all of the pressure is on this one person who's having to do everything in the home, be a mum, and try and, if they can, go out and earn money. It's asking so much of people. And I think, you know, that's way beyond my intellect or understanding of what the government could do to give them more support so they're not ending up with autoimmune issues or just feeling like utter shit and desperate.
But I think recognising the problem, which hopefully like I spell out clearly in the book, like even just recognising the problem, because I think we have moved so far away from the 1950s, but the expectations are still there. So we are out in the workplace and doing the masculine roles, but we're also expected to do all the female roles, and rewarding men and praising men as if they are the 1950s men. Like it shouldn't be remarkable that someone changes a nappy. Or if I remember when I'd go out to DJ and people were like, oh, who's looking after the baby? The dad. Oh, is he really hands-on? Yeah, we both are. Yeah, he works and I work, and we both look after. But you see it all the time. Like some dads still say they're babysitting, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you can't babysit your own children.
No, you're just being a dad. I remember once putting a video, and I feel like I need to do disclaimers every fucking 10 seconds having chats like this, but there will always be someone who's like, you chose to have kids, just be grateful. And it's like, it goes without saying, I love my children. I'll do anything for them. I wouldn't change anything. But the pressure and the expectation on women can still, alongside it, as a dialectic truth, be discussed and warrants the weight of chatting about this pressure, because so many of us are feeling it. So
that we can provide better support. And I hate this idea of like, well, you chose to have kids. Okay, well, I chose to work in a supermarket, or I chose to like work in television. If you have like a bad boss or your conditions are bad, and even if it was your dream job, like you're allowed to change that job, or you're allowed to go to HR and make a complaint. Like
you can
just because you choose motherhood doesn't mean that you have to like put up with the crap. And actually everyone loves their kids and are grateful for their kids, but it doesn't mean that things couldn't be better. And, you know, 74,000 women every year have to leave their jobs because they cannot afford the cost of childcare, or they cannot get flexible working. So not only is that putting women back in homes that aren't choosing to be back in homes, but like I'm sure there's research that shows it's economically more beneficial to have affordable childcare. And then also that takes some of the shame away that when you do have childcare, that's you put like, oh, well, I wouldn't have children just to let someone else raise them, or, oh, you've got a nanny, as if it's like this real privilege. But it shouldn't be a privilege to have support, especially not if you're working, because you can't do both. And it's frustrating when you see in so many other countries, like I talk about my sister's experience in the book in Holland of, you know, having someone that came and lived in her house for 2 weeks. We're made to feel like failures because we don't have that level of support.
Yeah. I mean, I put that pressure on myself. I will kill myself trying to get to the kids to school, because the kids' school isn't so near my house, I can't walk there. Race back, stuff food in my face, get myself ready for a full day of work, race back, do the school run again. And then if I do say to my mate Ella, oh, babe, could you get the kids off to school and I'll come and get them from your house? I feel like I've fucked up. I mean, it's absurd.
But meanwhile, you'll go on social media and there'll be some like child-free guy in his 20s being like, make sure you get 8 hours sleep. Make sure you cook all your meals from scratch. And so then we're made feeling like, oh no.
Yeah, I had 4 seconds sleep last night. I'm sleeping so bad at the moment. The whole thing is so bonkers. I mean, we certainly don't have long enough today to dissect not only everything in your brilliant book, but just this topic, because it's so huge. And I knew today that we would only be able to grab at these tiny moments to chat about, because it's a conversation that needs to keep on happening, well outside of your book and this podcast, and for men and women to chat about all of this, because it benefits everybody. All of it benefits everybody. And I think that's the takeaways for me from your book are, we've all got to judge other women less. First of all, because we don't have a fucking clue about their reality. We haven't got a clue. I barely know who I am, so why am I judging somebody else and their choices? And also that this conversation benefits everybody if we continue to have this fluid chat between all genders, and looking at all of these issues that have just been part of our history for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about like turning pain into power, and hopefully making people just consider all, like, as many of the experiences of womanhood. Like, so while mine will be different to yours, we all face the same gendered labels and boxes and pressures, and we're all trying to be like the good girl or the good woman or the good wife. And so, yeah, I hope it allows people to, and also to believe in themselves, most importantly.
Yeah, exactly. Have your own back.
Yeah.
Ashley, where's your happy place?
My happy place, I think, isn't a physical place. It's when I'm trusting my own gut and my own needs in that moment. So one day my happy place is with my kids. The next is out with my girlfriends. The next is thriving in my career. But it's just listening to myself.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for being on Happy Place today.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Ashley.
Loved it.